Ladies and gentlemen, starting with the first panelist, Mr. Vishal Nagpal. Let's have a huge round of applause and welcome onto the stage, data science and analytics leader at Amazon. Welcome, sir. Joining on stage is Ankur Pal, a chief data scientist at Aplazo. Let's have a big round of applause and welcome onto the stage, Mr. Giridharan Murugesan, assistant vice president at data engineering at Genpact. Thank you so much for being here, sir. And Milind Kasture, divisional manager, data engineering, ML ops, robotic process automation at Bajaj Auto. And this session is going to be moderated by Mr. Prashant Rao, head of application engineering at MathWork. Let's have a huge round of applause for the entire panel. Over to you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much, and very good afternoon to everybody. A warm welcome to all of you, especially the audience, but also to the panelists. I realize this session is what stands between you and lunch, and I'm sure that we will do our best to whet your appetites and get you going, give you enough food for thought, so that you can move on to enjoyable discussions during lunchtime as well. So think of this as an appetizer. Right? With that, you already heard a bit about the panelists. I think brief introduction was provided. So we'll get into it, but firstly, warm welcome. And you could probably see that there's a lot of expertise and experience here in these four gentlemen here in front of me. And I'm looking forward to us hearing from them and get them to share a bit of their insight into this domain, data warehouses versus data lakes. And I'm sure we're going to figure out the solution to all of this, right, during our conversation. So in terms of discussion flow, we'll get a brief overview of each panelist's work, what their domain is, what they work on, and what's important for them, especially in the context of choosing the right architecture, making the right decisions, enabling their teams also to do that as well. Then we'll briefly talk about the technology to get everybody up to speed. Everybody means mostly probably myself and maybe a small minority, but bear with us while we get everybody on the same page on the technology itself, especially the current state of technology. And then we will talk about the future state. Like what does it mean when LLMs, Gen AI, etc. hit us? We'll try to steer away from going into a full-fledged Gen AI discussion. I think you've got a lot of those today, but we'll try to stay away, but I think we may be dragged in any case. And then we'll also see whether we get some time for audience questions. And then if we have time, we'll try to understand a bit more about how you enable and empower your teams to make the right decisions, especially for the future, in terms of getting into taking the right decisions to build the right architecture that will enable you to scale, right? So with that, are we good? We're ready to start? Good. So I'll start with you, Milind. Bajaj Auto.
Yeah.
This is now, everybody knows the name, right? People have probably grown up with riding the scooters, etc. But tell us a bit about your perspective on the various different data architectures that you need to put in place from basically a manufacturing point of view as well as a customer B2C point of view. Can you tell us a bit about your work?
So basically, I am from a mixed background. By education, I am electrical and mechanical engineer, and by profession, I am computer engineer. So around 35 years experience in manufacturing sector, out of which 10 years I actually spent on the shop floors. So I know the other side of the planet, what the end users are expecting from us, and around 24 years in actual IT. I'm basically a hardcore programmer, started in 1985 as an assembly line programmer, assembly language, and still whenever I get time, I've used to do some dirty hands on the Python. Okay, so From the business angle, now the data is coming as a very important role. As somebody said just now, it's oil and it has its own value. So I see data as a like drops coming from the rain. Okay, so it is equally valuable for that. So whenever we gather this flood in the form of a dam kind of thing, so that we can call it as a data lake, where just the drops are coming and water is accumulated at the dam. From there, it goes to the different water treatment plants, where it is filtered, chemically treated, and then prepared for something proper use, maybe industrial use or household use. So that is kind of a data warehouse. And from there it goes to the respective areas water tank, okay, overhead water tank, and it is then mainly used for the local areas for their water needs. So that we can say as a data mart. So there different applications are there, like straight from the dam, the water can be used for generating the electricity. Means raw data can be directly consumed in one way. Another way is that we can send it to the agriculture, irrigation and all that purpose. So similarly in industry also, a lot of data is getting generated. Earlier it was not properly seen, but now considering the value, each data point where it is generated, it is now getting captured in our data lake. And from there, based on the different applications, the data is used, as I said, for different purpose. So I'll give more practical examples, but I think it should be a start.
I think this was a wonderful explanation of the entire ecosystem. I love the analogy. And so when the dam overflows, we probably go to the hyperscalers, but
I'm from the e-commerce side.
But you're from the e-commerce side, so I'll come to you, Vishal. So tell us a bit about, from an e-commerce perspective, Amazon e-commerce. How do you, what type of architectures do you use? What is your typical choice in this? What trade-offs do you make?
Yeah, so I know the topic is like data warehouses versus data lakes. So I'll be politically correct. It's never a versus. I think all of them happen in conjunction. There are various trade-offs that we have to make. The trade-offs are obviously on cost. So from a cost perspective, obviously data lakes become relatively easier. They are not that expensive, right? You can just, like Sir said, you can just dump data or you can dump water over there. So that's one part of it. From a latency or cost serving part of it, at times some of your data warehouses become much more easier to kind of serve, right? Third is from a security standpoint as well. So I am managing a team from a seller risk perspective, right? So a lot of times we also get regulatory requirements if we have to kind of furnish certain documents and all. So those documents you may not need at any like you'll not know when you need them, right? But when you are asked for, you have to provide them. So that's where you can always keep them in your S3 locations, but when you require them, you can always do it. But at the same time, the risk that you have with keeping in the data lakes is that you can't do a lot of checks and balances over there as well, because one of the things that we also have to ensure is like how are we doing the accesses, how are we kind of distributing the data. That becomes easier once you have something like a data warehouses, right? So that distribution part of it, data access part of it is much more easier. So those are the trade-offs. So for instance, a lot of our reporting, a lot of our like data features, those would still be lying in the data warehouses. The transformations, like for a lot of unstructured data, that is something that we'll do in a lot of data lakes and then bring them onto our warehouses, right? So depending upon the use cases, the trade-offs, requirements, we'll kind of use one versus the other.
And you have the flexibility because you have access to both, right? So
yes, we have.
You can get them all, right?
You're spoiled for choices, unfortunately.
You have to pay the fees for that, or it's written off for you. Just kidding. No, but that's interesting. I mean, so basically you have the right it's like a Swiss Army knife, right? You use the right tool for the right job.
Yep.
In this case, so that was very helpful to understand that. Ankur, from a fintech perspective.
Right. So I look at overall life cycle of data management, right? So incremental ROI is the most important thing, and more attachment toward problem solving. So in my last 6 years at leadership position in the Plazo or new solutions, we have changed a lot of tool platform architectures, right? So I'm saying in current stage, I started very early stage from scratch. So first problem I have to solve, how we can capture data, right? And what are the users and what are the use cases? So in early maturity stage, data warehousing is very important. That would enable business analytics, product analytics, right? So all your foundational diagnostic analysis, descriptive analysis based on warehousing, right? And then later on, once you have a lot of unstructured, semi-structured data, and then you want to leverage what would be your consumption pattern, then you would need extra layer. So data lake is very, storage where you will capture your unstructured, semi-structured data, then you move to warehouse, and then you build more data science platform, MLOps to, utilize for your predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics, ML and AI capability. So this has been the overall learning experience, and now I'm seeing, data is, different format of data or type of data is increasing a lot. So bounding only in data lake or data warehouse sometimes difficult when I'm talking about very specific problem, fraud detection use cases. So naturally graph database are giving a lot of value. So that keeps changing. But both are complementary, data lake and data warehouse. And from problems solving point of view, I think different use cases, but both go hand in hand.
Can you tell us a bit more about from a security standpoint, because the data that you're handling is probably sensitive in some manner, so can you tell us a bit more about
definitely.
How that plays?
So when we look at operational analytics, right, so in data warehouse, security layer or governance is relatively easy, right? You can have more control, you can have better encryption, but when you look at data lake, then you have to do extra effort towards creating those layers because you are consuming in your machine learning AI models, so data, model fairness you have to take care, right? What privacy, customer privacy related data you can't use, those layers you have to create. So in fintech, definitely this is a very important point. So we acquired certain licenses so that we able to follow certain processes of PCI compliance, ISO standards are the ones that we have used in new solutions in Plazo, and we are following those practices.
Okay. I'll come back to you
Sure.
at a later point. I think there's something around, it just struck me, something around, the regional or the differences from country to country that we can get into maybe from a data lake perspective. And Giridharan, I know, I should have gone this way, but I went like that for a specific purpose. You represent Genpact, and you work with a whole base of customers, right? So tell us a bit about, what do you see from across the base, various different customers as a consulting organization? What do you see in terms of the different architectures and also maybe the different challenges people are facing when they're trying to implement these various the data storage mechanisms?
So we have seen this whole digital journey for the last approximately 25 years. We have seen the digital journey, and what has fundamentally made this digital journey successful is the foundation. The foundation that the data warehouse and the data lake has given us, and the flexibility with which this foundation has supported us to accommodate everything that we have seen on our way. We have, in the last 25 years, we have pretty much seen this one transform into everything, and today the challenge that has been thrown at us is Gen AI. So the foundation that's going to make this digital journey successful, even in the Gen AI era, is the data warehouse and the data lake. So the foundation that we get it right, the flexibility that it is giving us to accommodate whatever has been thrown at us in the last 25 years is the real interesting thing about how this data lake and data warehouse has accommodated every challenge that has come our way in the last 20, 25 years. And the way we are building this foundation, let it be the data lake or the data warehouse, is no different from a GenAI challenge perspective. So are we positioned in the right place to support GenAI? Is data lake and data warehouse ready to make GenAI successful? Definitely yes. Data lake has its own advantages, data warehouse has its own advantages, but where is the sweet spot? How are we going to make how are we going to meet the next challenge that has been thrown at us in this digital journey, which is GenAI? That is what makes this whole proposition very interesting.
Thank you. So I think this gives us a good foundation to start off with. From here, let's continue building. Before I get into the technology a little bit, but I'll do a quick audience poll. So how many are you familiar with data lakes and data warehouses? Probably everybody. Great. I'm the only one here who's not. Is that so? How many of you use both? Okay. How many of you use data lakes? Aha. And how many of you use data warehouses? Okay. So I didn't have my glasses on, so I can, I can. But I thought data warehouses was more than data lakes. Of course, both is the majority.
Yeah.
Is that insightful?
See, because traditionally data warehouses was something that where everyone that starts with, right? If your foundation from the analytics is something which you start from a data warehouse. And one of the advantages that you have from a data warehouse is you can actually have a lot of your metadata over there. You know, like what data you're bringing in, you can control it. So I know that a lot of journeys start from data warehouses. I think as the use cases develop, as you understand that, okay, you need to do more predictive part of it, you need to bring more different types of data. That's where I think data lakes come in really handy. And then, like we discussed, you can always transform a lot of your data from data lakes to bring into data warehouses.
Right, so if we look at from the value creation point of view, so very early stage, generally most of the company would start leveraging data warehouse because the use cases are enabling overall teams, product team, business team, and science team. Machine learning AI would evolve more later stage, right? And more maturity required to identify what are the problems where you would need machine learning AI, otherwise very simplistic solution would work.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why data lake, MLOps, data science platform practices you will see in more mature organizations.
Yeah, so probably it starts with probably business intelligence is what I'm understanding, basically, and then moving to various different other probably predictive analytics or prognostics in some way that you'd probably enable through AI, ML, DL.
And very important point I want to add here, I mean, when you're working in unstructured or semi-structured data, time to insight or time to intelligence life cycle is long, right? Creating features, creating value would take long time, very high discovery problem. Yeah. But in data warehouse, time to insight is relatively short because data is very organized, very processed, right? Yeah. You can easily retrieve and you can create a lot of reports, a lot of intelligence. So this is the long tail, short tail difference in consumption patterns.
Yeah, yeah.
So
yes, I wanted to come to you, yes.
Okay. So I have a different perspective on using this data lake, data warehouse concept. So basically from our angle as a user kind of thing, so use the right tool at the right place. So I can grow from Bangalore to Pune in 1 hour, 10 minutes, but I cannot travel using the same plane within the Bangalore city. So I have to use something different vehicle for that. So similarly, if you consider the industrial applications, so there are mainly 3 to 4 categories of applications are there. One is that a BI kind of thing, Power BI or whatever it is, analytical. Second is the canned reports, some ready-made reports which management want to see on daily basis. There is a mandate that it should be ready by 8 a.m. or something like that. So do whatever you want to do. Third category is that the what we call as a citizen data scientist. So there are certain team members in organizations. So they have some technical knowledge as well as analytical ability. So they just say that you just give me the data and I will see what to do with this data. So they need basically raw data or whatever data available in that format. Whereas the BI or canned report, they need a special treatment for the data. And lastly, there could be certain scenarios where data is pre-processed, maybe in runtime, and fed to the another application via API. So the end user consumption is maybe application or some other system. Yeah. So it depends on what kind of use is there, so data lake or data warehouse, that is appropriate.
Can you tell us a bit about the challenge also, because from a manufacturing setup, you have machine-generated data as well as then user-generated data, so or end user generated data or marketing data. So how and your portfolio covers both.
Yeah.
How do you manage these two various different
so
data
something slight example I would like to give. Normally in any organization we use to record our attendance because that is mainly needed for the payroll processing. Maybe some companies might have single punching or some companies might have in and out kind of thing. So this data is primarily used for the payroll processing, but there could be another scenario also how this data can be used because this is already generated data. In case of assembly lines in any product, so there is a fixed cycle type and there are different stages. So unless until each stage perform his task within the given cycle time, the output is not generated at the required time. So the crucial part is that at the beginning of the day, the assembly line should be set in a proper manner. All respective skill workers should be there on the particular stage. Yeah. And this information is very crucial. For example, if the cycle time is say 30 seconds, if you lose 10 minutes, then you will lose 20 product within that 10 minutes and it could cost something like that. So this punching data can be used to the line supervisor in his handheld devices that how many people are available at this moment because this is a real-time data. And at what stage I have absenteeism kind of thing. So this will help him to set up the line more frequently within a less time. Yeah. And also he is having a database of skilled workers, skill set of same stage. Then he can immediately work out which another person can be replaced.
And now I know I'm spending a little bit more time with you, but can you tell us also a bit about your requirements or your expectations on vendors and how you set up the entire ecosystem?
So basically, from the product angle, so our core business is different. We are not the analytical company or something. So we have problems and we come up with the expected solution. Okay, we wish to do in this way, but we don't have that skill, may not have and that is not our core area. So normally in that case, we search for the partners who will support us to solve this problem, maybe solution this problem also. So that is the normal scenario in which we go.
Okay. I think that's a natural handover point, right?
So I think he touched upon a myth that got created in the industry early on. The point was value density. I have data now. I have huge data now. Where is my value? Like, do I have value in processing this data? Where is the value density? And the myth that got created in the industry early on is the data with relatively less value density sits in my data lake, and the value with higher value density goes to my data warehouse. So that myth is something that's getting away now. People have started seeing real value or an increase in the value density on the data that is sitting in data lake. That's one perspective of it. The other perspective is we have huge volume of data getting generated. We have an explosion of data. Okay. So even though I find value, is there an affordability for me to keep the data in data warehouse? Or can I leverage on the cost-effective storage of data lake? That is where the space between data lake and data warehouse is getting narrower. So cost is one aspect of it, value density, as we said, security, flexibility. So naturally, when you have a business urge to make this solution more cost effective, all those features that were there on the data warehouse, like the security aspects of it, the management, metadata framework, data governance, we are compelled to get those things transformed onto the data lake so that it becomes cost efficient in managing such a huge volume of data. So in my sense, it's shrinking, like it's coming closer, and very soon we are going to see a perfect hybrid product somewhere in between data lake and data warehouse, which is going to perfectly suit the business requirements, where we will be able to provide all the things that we're supporting on the data warehouse with a cost-efficient manner on a data lake. So a hybrid in between is where we are looking at.
That's a direction we're getting into the future state. Yeah. I have one question to you, Ankur, because you work across geographies, and you mentioned also the user data sitting in data lake. How do you manage the various different requirements, let's say regulatory or other, to be able to segment or also ensure that there's security across all this different data that you're getting?
Definitely, this is very apt and important point, because in my company, when we are going at fund stage, this is very important question: what is the sustainability in long-term view, right? And maybe in geography we are operating, those compliant regulations are not very mature, but that would come in certain time, right? So when we are building solutions, we are very sure of what are the best practices exist worldwide, either in Europe, your data management practices, or in India, your fintech regulations. So those we have to start following. So for example, in machine learning AI application side, in risk management, explainability is very important, right? So if you're not able to explain why you are rejecting or what are the reasons, then later stage you will get caught, right? So definitely, this is worldwide. Your science would be very common, but fundamental would be same across the geographies.
Yeah. I suppose there's something on the regulatory side, but also if bias happens during this stage and it comes out, it's not just the regulatory, it's also
definitely, because this is very big reputation loss. So I'm saying if your model is not fair, right, and if you're not utilizing data properly and there is privacy related gaps, right, then later stage, only one wave required to make it from 100x to 0. We have seen in India in Paytm recent cases, right? So I'm saying security is very important aspect, at least in fintech, right? And governance is very important around explainability and fairness when we are either using a data warehouse or data lakehouse, when we are using at the application level.
Yeah. So I think we got a brief fly through the current state of technology and how you're using it as well. And Giridharan, you started us on that path of what's the future going to look like, the convergence, so to say. But specifically now, especially when you're thinking of generative AI, LLMs, what's the future looking like in terms of integration of that with your data infrastructure, whether it's data lakehouse, data warehouse or data lake?
That's also a word.
I know, I wanted to get there later. Who wants to take that first? Integration.
See, probably where we are looking at is, like, today everybody are convinced that it's a decoupled storage and a decoupled computer. Nobody has second thought about it. Just looking back at where we started from a storage perspective, we all know that this industry was heavily dominated by proprietary RDBMS. the days when we used to have DB2s, Oracles, SQL servers completely dominating the data storage world, where it used to be a completely black box, completely proprietary. It used to take care of your encryption, your backups, whatever is need to be done, it's to be done. Then we had this era of big data, where slowly the proprietary nature of data storage and data processing was broken, and then slowly all the open source players started coming in. We had huge volume, we had huge velocity of data, we could handle variety of data, the big data came in. Yeah. And then cloud naturally adopted all those flexibilities and all those nice features from the big data world got transformed into cloud. So now, in my perspective, as I said, there is so much data to handle that now cost has become a very, very key driver in any solution. Unless you get your cost proposition right, the customer is really not going to buy in on your solution. So with this huge volume of data coming in, I clearly see that even from a storage perspective, the open source files, the era we call it the open table format.
Open table. Where
now no more proprietary storage nature. It's all open table format, where I know that my data is flat files, and the whatever is the engine can come and start consuming my data that is sitting in files, where it is relatively cheaper, a cost-efficient solution. That's really catching up. So we can see a reason why Databricks is going with data lake, which is giving them all the nice features of a data warehouse now, almost leveraging on the Apache Delta Lake. Yep. Databricks has come up with its own innovative solution. Snowflake is already looking at Iceberg as one of its way forward solution, incorporating Iceberg into the world. So somewhere the nature is the proprietary space which used to be relatively premium is clearly shrinking. It's clearly going to be the open source nature of storage is going to be the way forward from a data lake and data warehouse perspective. Wherever we go, the one perspective that I have is it's going to be multiple players, it's going to be open source. That's the kind of flexibility even the customer is looking at. Okay, I don't want to get hooked up to one platform, one product, one storage. No. What is the kind of flexibility that is giving me? Tomorrow, I have a need to switch from technology A to technology B. Yeah. What is my flexibility? So clearly, we see this trend evolving as someone going forward. I see this trend dominating the future, at least from a storage perspective. Compute is again, that's out of scope of our discussion. We are discussing data lake and data warehouse. Computing is another interesting story, but at least from a storage perspective, where we are going is, it's going to be more an open source driven solution.
That's very good insight, and I think I'll pass it on to Vishal. From your perspective, where do you see it going?
I think to extension to what he was saying, right? Data storage follows our data applications, right? If you see what we used to, a lot of the applications that we had was around credit risk, a lot of the applications around marketing, retail, right? So the data requirements were also like that because our applications were those. Few weeks back when we saw ChatGPT 4.0, right? It is voice, audio, everything that you can do real time. So what it means that is that a lot of these applications will be very ubiquitous, right? We'll have it on our phones, we'll have it, if not in another 3 to 6 months, maybe in a year or so, which means there will be a need for us to have all of that data available. If we start from an enterprise standpoint as well, there are a lot of chatbots which are now getting generated using RAGs, right? RAGs, right? So for instance, you want to have like an HR chatbot. You say, hey, what is my leave policy right now, say in Germany? So you create a chatbot where you have your data stored in your S3 locations or you have in your data lake. But now the challenge is, how do you, the traditional challenge for the data lakes is that how do you know that your data is getting updated? For instance, now your policy, HR policy has changed, your leaves have changed from say 10 to 15. How do you manage that? How do you have that versioning control? Which is where that open table format comes into play, that it's somewhere a mix between what you had in a data warehouse and what you have in data lake. You have your metadata, you have your how insertions and deletions can happen. It's much easier, right? So that enablement for those applications will be done with that evolution happening in the data storages. And the fact that we'll need a lot of context to our data as well, right? For instance, I was hearing this quote, a rice to a farmer is different from a rice to a chef. If someone is saying rice in a ChatGPT application, if he's a farmer, he's saying, I'm a buyer, or I'm a seller. If he's a chef, he's a buyer. So how do you put that context into your data? So all of those things is something which will come in as we evolve in those applications.
Thanks. I think these are all various different considerations as to how all the technology is going to come together in some way, or enable kind of the best type of flexibility across both the architectures. Just thought oh wow, that was, time flew for us at least. I hope for you as well. I just thought we'll open it out for a few questions from the audience and get some interaction. Any questions from anybody to any of the panelists? There's one up front here. If we can get a mic across.
So we know at what scale the data Gen AI is growing. Do you think the data engineering also is going on that scale? Or if not, how we can cope up with that?
The question was, Gen AI is growing.
Does the platform engineering, data engineering is also on that phase or not?
See, as I touched upon earlier, the foundation that's going to make Gen AI successful is your data lake and the data warehouse. And we are pretty much well prepared. As I said, this data lake and data warehouse has supported everything that has been thrown at it in the last 30 years. This digital revolution has seen it all. And currently we have Gen AI, and Gen AI is not going to be any different from a data lake and a data warehouse perspective. Data lake and data warehouse are fully prepared to take up Gen AI challenge. Like all the other challenges that we have seen in the last 30 years that has come in on the data warehouse and data lake space, we are fully prepared to make Gen AI successful as well from a data warehouse.
So according to you, all organizations are prepared for implementing Gen AI in their applications. So implementing a Gen AI applications, as you said, the foundation of data lake and data warehouse they will provide. Like, is there a need to re-architecture the data platforms for the organizations to implement Gen AI?
Okay, so definitely, because when we understand Gen AI, so all data warehouse or data lake house, you use either ELT or ETL, right? So a lot of preparation time, pipeline time, there would be models, and this life cycle will be more shorter in terms of time to insight, right? Because a lot of energy in data engineers are putting into creating values, right? So this would be very streamlined. And then if you understand the use cases, so more users would evolve. That gonna multiply more because Gen AI would give more capability. So those retrieval or analysis would be more smoother, right? So a lot of things would evolve, and ML and AI framework a capability on top of data lake and data warehouse.
See, I think more and more real-time data will be ingested in future. Apart from that, for getting the correct result out of the Gen AI, data operations is also very important. Unless until the pre-processing happens at a required pace, you will not get a correct answer for that. So in that case also, we have to be prepared.
And I suppose there's also a cost and energy trade-off as well, right? Definitely. You need the speed, but you also need to trade that off with what that means in terms of...
Yeah.
It's a complete ecosystem that makes Gen AI successful. Today, Gen AI, a lot of people think it's just an API call. I'm going to invoke my Gen AI giving me solution. No. For a sustained a product-like solution, the complete ecosystem will be working around to make Gen AI successful. That's where as data engineers, we are laying that foundation to make sure that the Gen AI is giving you a sustained solution, which is scalable, flexible, and of course secured.
There was another question up here, sir. Yeah, you got the mic.
So excellent discussion, excellent panelist. So my two questions over here. One, see, the volume of data is growing as exceptional way, correct? So first of all, I have two questions. Okay, so you have a data warehouse or data lake. The volume of data is getting stored. So obviously, first question comes on the cost optimization. So as you are the experts, okay, what type of advice you give to the organization, like for example, Mr. He was in the product side, okay, but he may not require the huge amount of data what is required. So for him, the cost optimization comes as the first question. Two, my follow-up question to this, okay, in terms of the ROI, what we get, what is the real trend of ROI is happening across the volume of data what we stored? Is that ROI comes in a year or two, or what is the real trend what we see in ROI? So these are my two questions. Thank you.
I can try to take a stab. So from a optimization perspective, right, as an organization, you need to have a lot of policies, right? So one of the policies that you need to have is like from an access management. Who you want to give access to what level, right? So for instance, if you're saying that you have huge amounts of data, you can't give that access to everyone, right? You need to have access to only selected applications or selected use cases. So that's one. The other thing that's important is like how do you want to kind of do a lot of retention policy? You may so happen that you want to continue having data for 10 years, 15 years, and then you may question why do you want to have that data for so many years, right? So you need to have some sort of a retention policy and say there will be certain storages which will be expensive, faster to serve. There will be certain storages which will be lesser expensive but slow to serve. You want to move them, and then maybe subsequently you just phase them out, right? So that's another strategy. The third is obviously you need to do a lot of audit, right? If you don't do a lot of audit, you'll continue to have a lot of data that will kind of add up and add up and add up. So somewhere that sort of an audit, and what you, as an organization, what needs to be done is a very strong foundation on metadata, right? And which is where, like, as we are kind of getting into this data where is a lot unstructured, how you can kind of make sense out of it, how can you have that metadata to make sure that, okay, you're not ensuring that there is a duplication of data in your multiple parts of the organization, so ensuring that. So those are few things that you can kind of ensure. From an ROI perspective, I think the question is not just to data or storage. I think the question is to the entire investment in general. So if you see any application or an ML or AI that you want to kind of do right now, there's the storage is just one part of it. There's a compute part of it, and at times compute might be much higher, right? There's a headcount cost, there's an SD cost. So, and there's also maybe a bad debt cost as well, right? So, or a tech debt. So the question has to be on the entire part of it, like how you can kind of, what is the ROI that you're generating on the end use case, and maybe not just on the storage, I'd say.
Good. Thank you very much. I see, is there one more question? Yeah, okay, fine. We'll take one more, and please go ahead. So I think the mic is on its way. Oh. I think it went another direction, so we'll take so we'll come to you. We'll do a quick question there, and then here.
Hey, yeah. Shankar here from HDFC. A nice discussion actually. See, the era, right, it started from data warehouse, data lake, and the other things are coming up, right? So my questions are related to the governance and the audit perspective, you know, because using the data, generating the ROI, of course, it's a part of business, and anyway, all the organizations will be heading towards that, will be doing it. When it comes to the regulatory, right, okay, from warehouse to data lake, and some sort of redundancy will also get created. So what do you think, like, to what percentage of the data redundancy is acceptable according to you guys, is my question. And there is a sub question as well related to governance, the audit part of it, right? So when we are using the, the unstructured data, I think a gentleman just before this, they're discussing about the biasing of these things, right? So now you see in the banking, we have a lot of governance from RBI and other things coming up, right? So what kind of changes you are expecting in terms of the auditing part of it, right? Like when we are not supposed to use the data just for looking the ROI in the mind, we also need to keep the security and the privacy. When it comes to banking industry, the game completely will, taken to the altogether in a different direction, the way it used to happen in the other traditional industries, right? So what are your, takes on these criteria?
So probably from a data redundancy perspective, the objective is zero redundancy between data lake and data warehouse. As we said today, the data lake is ready to give you all the features of a data warehouse where you really don't have a need to duplicate the data between a data lake and a data warehouse. And from a data governance, data privacy, data security perspective, all what used to be there in your data warehouse is today it is available in your data lake as well. It is just that it could be open source. You have to put in a little more effort. It's not out of box as a proprietary product, but pretty much data lake has evolved to support everything that once used to be supported by data warehouse.
Just I would like to add, basically to get the proper ROI and cost effectiveness, you have to decide the data into 3 big segments. One is the hot, warm and cold data. So whatever data which is required near real time or near real time, it should be on the appropriate in-memory kind of database. Another part is that which is a warm data, means not required on every moment, but maybe daily or something. So that could be kept in the database. And rest once in a while it is required, then that can be on the data lake in the file format or something.
It's very nice. We'll take one last question and.
One thing, sir, this data lake and data warehouse concept, the unstructured data, the moment it was trained and it was pumped to the lake, is it necessary to keep that unstructured data in the warehouse? Can it be depleted, pop it down? Or we have to keep that unstructured data also once the data is processed? Is it required so? Because already the data is ready to use from your lake, then what is the point of keeping that unstructured data?
So, yeah. If I get it correctly, are you saying that if
no, sir, the moment it is in the sequence, it is in the process, the data is continuously pumping and it is collecting there in the lake. Then once it is structured, it will be pumped into your warehouse, so for future use. Yeah. So the moment it is processed or transformed, then is it required to keep that unstructured data in the same fashion there?
Okay, I get it. So in some cases, yes. So for instance, by the way, it's not always applicable that you have to use your data, you have to bring it to a warehouse and then only you can use it. So firstly, I don't think you can also use it directly from your data lakes or S3 locations. You could use that. So that's one. Even if you've kind of structured that data, brought it into a data warehouse, so then you have to understand that what is the use for it, right? For instance, if there's a data which can get updated, like the case that we talked about, like if you're putting in some sort of a leave policy, which will get updated, right? Then maybe you will still have to do it and go back to your data lake and say, let me update it over there. But if you think that maybe no, this is something that I'm kind of doing it, I don't intend to kind of update it, maybe not. But honestly, I think a lot of organizations are not doing that because the cost for data lakes are not at least that significant, right? Maybe at a point in time where it has become significant, that's something that may have to be thought about. But I don't see a lot of organizations doing that.
You may just keep the data on the lake itself and then.
So another one, sir, we are getting data from different sources, and it is being processed. It is some sort of a heterogeneous data based on the time coordinates or the space coordinates. So if we deploy the model, if we dip the model in the lake, then it is taking the heterogeneous data at different layers and at different time periods. Then what about my predictions? Then is there any strategy is there to take care of those aspects?
Want to take it?
Right. So when you are saying you are storing data in a data lake, right? So then lineage you have to sort out, as well as when you're utilizing for building any feature, then those quality checks or layers you have to create to correct data if you are utilizing for prediction. So that's why your feature store is important, right? So feature store would take care of what features you are creating, and that is the foundational layer that is consuming in the your model. So on top of that, MLOps or feature store would help in solving these problems.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. The red screen is blinking at us. Time's up over here. But I'm sure this discussion is one that will not stop on this stage right now. I'm sure there'll be a continuous, ongoing conversation, discussion. We're all probably available, I think, for a bit longer today. And so if you have more questions, do come up and chat. I thank all the panelists. Thank you very much for sharing your insight, giving us some perspective from your experience, you know, and allowing us to learn from that. Thank you, audience, for patiently listening and also for the very, very insightful questions. Thank you, DES at AIM, for providing this platform to all of us. And I wish you a very happy rest of DES and see you around sometime. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.